Welcome to Nayfee Paints. In this video I'll be showing you how I painted this statue dedicated to the dark god Nurgle. Let's crack in. This miniature here was supposed to be the second of my Lord of Contagion painting tutorials, but I decided one day to not pay attention to the chemical I was using and wash it in the incorrect chemical and melt the model into oblivion. So as you can see, the model is pretty bad. I've lost all the detail, there's pockets of bubbles all over it, and it's pretty much garbage. But instead of throwing it away, I thought I could rescue it and turn it into a heavy, weather-beaten statue. So what I've done, I've just made a little plinth for it out of plasticard, made myself a Nurgle symbol out of some cogs, and glued him into position on top. So the lesson learned here is when cleaning your model, make sure you clean it in the correct chemical, because if you don't, you won't have a model left to paint. Before painting, I've undercoated the model with Vallejo's Surface Primer Black, and I've mixed in a little bit of Flow Improver and run this through my airbrush. Here I'm undercoating the statue grey, but then I decided to paint the entire plinth, getting some paint onto the grey. So I suggest just to leave the statue alone, paint the plinth first, and then go back and do the statue later. This first coat to go on the plinth is Lead Belcher from Citadel. This is painted straight out of the pot. Now I start with the Lead Belcher once the entire plinth had a nice even coat of the colour. To start putting up the rust effect, I've gone with Balthasar Gold from Citadel. I've torn off a bit of household kitchen sponge, put a little of this paint on there, dabbed most of the paint off, and then with the little remaining on the sponge, I've just dabbed this over random parts of the model. This will give the model a more natural appearance of rust starting to build up, and also a nice base coat that we can start adding some more colours onto in the future. With the gold laid down, now we've got a nice base coat of rust to build upon. This next colour here is Mournfang Brown from Citadel. Using my paintbrush, I'm just painting inside those rusted areas, leaving some of the Balthasar Gold visible. Once I've done this over the entire model, I've then started to add some Squig Orange to the Mournfang Brown. I've done this a few times, gradually adding more Squig Orange to the paint to lighten up the brown further. This will give me different tones of brown, representing different depths of rust. How many times you want to do this step is up to you. With the rust down, now it's time to give the model a wash. I've gone with Old Earth from Vallejo. I've mixed a little bit of water into this. This is about an 80-20 mix. I've just applied this wash over the entire model. With that wash dried, now it's time to really build up the rust. To do this, I'm using Tamiya Master Weathering Kit C, and the colour I'm using out of that is the Orange Rust. I'm applying some of the orange rust to the little makeup brush supplied with the kit, and applying it onto the area of the model in a streaking or dabbing motion to slowly build up the rust. If I applied too much of the rust in certain areas, with my finger I just remove the excess, or to make it look a bit more dusty, I just use the brush end of this little tool and just brushed on some of the pigment. If you want to build up the rust a bit thicker, just simply add more of the pigment to your little brush. And I've just repeated these same steps around the entire plinth. With all the rust applied, now I've given the model a light coat of Mr. Superclear's matte varnish. This will seal in the pigments nicely. Once the varnish is dried, I've gone over to Rush Texture from Vallejo. With this colour, I like to vary up the textures a lot, so sometimes I'll go straight from the pot, other times mixing a little or a lot of water with the paint. When applying this paint onto the model, I also like to wipe a lot of it away, leaving nice streaks of the colour. This next step is going back to pigments again. This colour here is Medium Rust from MIG. I've got myself two little paint wells, put a little bit of the pigment in each. And to each paint well, I've added a little bit of Flow Improver from Vallejo, varying up the amounts, so in one of the paint wells, it's a lot thinner than the other. And with these two mixes, I've just applied them with the paintbrush around random parts of the model. This will give the plinth another couple of tones of browns to really build up the natural look of the rust. The final step of the plinths is to add some more pigment to the model. So I've gone back to the Orange Rust from the Tamiya Weathering Master Kit C and Medium Rust from MIG. With the Orange Rust, I've applied that the same way, just using the little tool supplied, and I've just applied that around the model. With the medium rust, I've just used a dry paintbrush, scooped up some of the pigment and applied that to the base around the model. I've gone back and forth between the two pigments until I was happy with the final result. Once I was settled with the amount applied, I then sealed it in with Mr. Superclear's matte varnish again. With that, the plinth is now completed and we can move on to the statue. For the statue, this first coat here is ash grey from the Army Painter. I've given the entire statue a coat of this colour. Once the ash grey had dried, using a stippling brush, I've put some stone golem, also from the Army Painter, onto the brush, dabbed off most of it like I was about to dry brush something, and stippled on this colour around the statue. Once that was done, I didn't clear my brush, I swapped over to Spaceship Exterior. Again, wiped off most of the paint and stippled on this colour, making sure to leave some of the ash grey and stone golem still visible. And the final stippled on colour was a 80-20 mix of Spaceship Exterior and Corax White from Citadel. With the stippling effect, I'm not trying to cover over the previous step. I'm trying to blend those together so I get sort of a marbling effect. It didn't work exactly how I imagined, but it looks okay. With the stippling all done, now it's time to start weathering up the statue. This first colour here is Nuln Oil from Citadel. I've mixed this in a painting well with some water and applied this over the entire statue, trying to run it into all the cracks and crevices and not let it pull too much on top of the plinth. Once the Nuln Oil had fully dried, I've gone over to Biel-tan Green from Citadel. I've added no water to this paint. I've painted it around the model sparingly where moss and grime might be building up over time. Some of these areas might require 1, 2 or 3 coats. Again, varying it up this way will give you better results in the end. Once I was finished with the Biel-tan Green and it was still wet, I then swapped over to Oiled Earth from Vallejo and applied this into areas where the Biel-tan Green was applied previously. This will bleed the two colours together. Again, this will represent dirt and grime building up and give it a more natural effect. With those two washes now fully dry, it's time to move on to the final step of the model. This is Moss and Lichen from Vallejo. I've applied this colour with varying amounts of water to get darker and lighter spots on the model. Applied it very sparingly, slowly building it up over time, as it's quite a dominant colour on such a dark model. With the Moss and Lichen applied, I've let that dry and it's now ready for the tabletop. And here it is in all its melted glory. Thanks for watching Nayfee Paints. If you liked the video, please click the sub button and leave me a like. If there's anything you want to see in a future video, please leave a comment in the comment section below and I'll see you in the next one. Catch ya!